He's a former Marine and a retired sportscaster who wants to be your next 8th District Congressman. He is endorsed by the leadership of the North Carolina Republican Party. Now, I sat down with Johnson and asked, why do you want to go to Washington?
I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. I learned the idea of this country and protecting this country and some of the values of the country that I observed in the Marine Corps. I see the direction that we're headed and what's going on. I've got 9 grandchildren, 7 boys, 2 girls. And I'm thinking, just as you would or a lot of other people would think too, we're headed in a different direction than what I can ever remember. With record spending, with deficits and trillions of dollars, a health care bill that nobody wanted, a stimulus package that hasn't worked. We've lost 3.5 million jobs since the stimulus bill came out. And I think if you're a good person with good ideas, and I represent a fresh face. I've had the endorsement of the Republican Party, but I've been to Washington to visit. I am a fresh face. I am truly an outsider, going up there without any preconceived notions of feathering my cap, Dave, or wanting to look for a lobbyist job when I'm done. I'm going up there as a conservative to vote for the people of the 8th District. And the conservative line is what we'll take, hopefully get enough to get the majority, and get this country back, rein in this spending, and get a jobs program that really works and puts people back to work. We don't have that now.
Well, it's not just the Democrats who have, risen that debt to tremendous levels.
Right.
It was the Republicans as well that did this. What makes you think that you can have an impact when you're one of hundreds if you're a congressman?
It's numbers, Dave. It's numbers, and you're right. The Republican Party shares some of the responsibility here. But if we get the numbers, and we have to have the numbers, we have to have the majority to be effective. We know now that we don't, and we can't be. But I think with the wave of what we're talking about and what way people are talking, and again, it comes down to the vote. That's what's so great about this whole process. It comes down to the vote. You trust the American people, the people in the 8th District. They're angry. They're upset. And I think if I'm given the opportunity, along with other Republicans as well, to get John Boehner sworn in as our Speaker of the House, then good things can happen. I think if Republicans get another chance, Dave, they're going to do better. I do believe that.
What do you think are the key issues facing the 8th District right now?
I think the biggest issue facing the district is jobs. We have hardworking people, men obviously and women, but primarily men, trying to support a family, trying to say, look, I'm educating my kids, keeping that roof over my head. I need a job. We spent 12 months talking about health care, passed a bill that basically 60 to 65% of the American people didn't want, and now we're coming back now. We're still not in an area where we're talking about job creation. I would love to see President Obama say this, what Ronald Reagan did, what John Kennedy did. I'm going to cut corporate taxes. I'm going to cut taxes. Reagan went from 46% a corporate tax rate to 34%. The economy soared. President Kennedy did the same thing. The economy rebounded. What we need right now is the idea that we can get these taxes down, because the Bush tax cuts are going to expire at the end of this year, 2010. We are looking at one of the biggest increases, if you will, going back to previous rates in the history of our country. That's going to fall right on the shoulders of small business. It's going to curtail any kind of development, if you will, from small business, with an incentive, Dave, to say I can go out and hire. I can go out and expand my business. These tax cuts have to be implemented as far as extending those tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts. Cut them there, and also cut personal gains taxes as well, going from 15 to 20%. Just overall, we're seeing $1 trillion in new taxes with a health care plan. Taxes won't work. It's stifling the economy as we speak.
Would you cut programs?
You have to look at everything, Dave.
What's on the table as far as you're concerned? What would you cut?
I think entitlements are on the table as well. When you look at Medicare, $60 billion in fraud last year. $60 billion in fraud last year in Medicare alone. I know there are programs out there that when I look at hospice has been cut several billion or $1 million in the current health care plan. Programs that work, they get cut. I don't understand exactly how that came about and why that came about, but we're going to have to, if we get the majority, everything is literally going to have to be on the table. I do believe this, and I know people get nervous. You're going to cut Social Security. Promises made are promises kept. Those that are obviously in the system now, they're not going to be cut. But we have to. We owe it to our children, our grandchildren, to the next generations, if you will. We're going to have to put everything on the table. And I think if Republicans get another chance because of the environment and the way people feel right now, you're going to see definitely see some cuts. Reducing spending, if nothing else, just to get a handle. Our national debt right now, interest on the debt's over $200 billion a year, Dave. When's it going to stop?
Would you cut military spending?
No, absolutely not.
Why not? Because,
No.
I mean, there's a lot of waste, some people say.
There is a lot of waste in there. I would say accountability. I was in the Marine Corps 4 years. We cannot, this day and time, we absolutely cannot cut military spending. But obviously, we need accountability in the military. You've heard it, and I've heard it. Overlapping programs. When we get weapons that are finished, come off the assembly line, if you will, and they're already obsolete, that's not good. We have got to cut out the waste and fraud in every program. And I wouldn't be afraid to ask for a general audit of our government. And somebody would say, that's going to take 5 years. Well, then let's start tomorrow.
What do you believe is the most important amendment to the Constitution?
I think it probably has to be the Second Amendment, our right, obviously, to bear arms, because we're constantly under attack, and I think there's no question about that. That cannot be altered in any way. We are a free society.
Did you grow up in a conservative home? What was your home like?
No, I didn't. I grew up in a Democratic family.
What's happened to you?
What's happened to me, they say. But I got out of the Marine Corps in 1964. When that was when Johnson put a thumping on Goldwater. And then from 64 to 68, things just changed. I started working and looked at a paycheck and said, what's going on with this? And gradually things changed. And I voted, Richard Nixon was the first president I voted for. I voted in every presidential election since 68, but he was the first Republican that I voted for.
How are you different from Tim DiAnnunzio?
I got to say this about Tim. I've gotten to know him over the last 6 months. I know he loves his country. I have no doubt that the fervor he feels in love for this great country. He served in the Army, and of course I did in the Marine Corps, and I respect him very much for that. It's been a very tough race. It's very demanding. Politics is a contact sport, Dave. I found that out. But I think people have to look at our demeanor. They have to look at both of us. The vote's coming up next Tuesday. And they have to say which one of these candidates, Republicans have to decide, is it going to be Harold Johnson or is it going to be Tim DiAnnunzio? Who can best represent the 8th District in Washington and be an effective representative? And I think if you look at me with my background, with the history of the way I've conducted myself during this campaign, I haven't lost my temper. I don't do that. I'll discuss the issues and talk about things as well. And I think, and I would hope they would say Harold Johnson's going to get our vote. And I think that we can do very well against Larry Kissel in the fall.
You don't believe he has the temperament to be a member of Congress?
I think he has to work on that, Dave. You can't go to Washington and want to tear down the entire government. That would never work. And you can't fly off the handle and just be almost out of control.
Do you believe that Tim DiAnnunzio's past is fair game?
I think it is, and let's remember something now. I've been the hammer, not the hammer, I've been the nail for 5 months going up to the primary. I did not run one negative ad throughout the primary. I said we're going to go down a positive road, positive message, which is what I did throughout that first primary. I did no negative ads whatsoever. Second primary, when he was really coming after me, I think he's got something out there now, one ad saying I never voted. I've never voted. Well, that's not true. Check with the Idaho County Board of Elections, and they'll tell you Harold's been very consistent with his voting. And I think when it's public record, the door is open. I think Tim had to know going in that the past is going to be discussed, Dave. It always is. When you open the book, you look at the pages and you say, well, what do we see? Flip them over. The
chairman of the Republican Party in North Carolina said Tim DiAnnunzio is unfit for any public office. Do you agree with that? Tom Fetzer said that. That's Tom's opinion, and I think the voters are obviously going to have to decide that. Again, we come back to temperament, and again, I respect Tim very much, and I know down deep he's a good man and cares about this country, but temperament is so critical. You can't be an explosive personality in politics. That's not going to get you anywhere, Dave. We are going to talk about that Republican contest for Congress with our panel and the move to bring the Democrats to Charlotte. Coming up next.